So, before we begin, here's some background. My introduction to Saints Row goes back to 2009. The guy one of my aunts was dating at the time was over at my house and just randomly handed me a copy of the Saints Row 1 and Saints Row 2 combo pack. Being a bored 7-year-old with nothing better to do than play Grand Theft Auto 4 over and over again, I started playing the same night, and I was immediately hooked. I think I started playing the original first, but it was too hard and I played the second one first instead. After finishing the second one, I went back and played the original. Then when Saints Row the 3rd came out back in 2011, I got that bitch the day it came out at a Walmart. I didn't know what pre-ordering was back then since I was 9, but if I could have pre-ordered the game, I would have. It was the first time I ever really paid attention to the pre-release material for a video game. I was reading Game Informers about it, I was watching the trailers on YouTube on my grandma's shitty flip phone, my friends and I wouldn't stop talking about it. Needless to say, I was super excited. It came out, I played it, and enjoyed it, and I ended up more or less doing the same thing with Saints Row 4. I didn't get the game myself since it came out not long after I had moved down to Texas, but I did end up borrowing my cousin's copy of the game. Despite the very notable flaws within the game's direction and the game itself, I enjoyed it quite a bit. The story is probably the weakest out of all the Saints Row games, Get Out of Hell included, but the gameplay was super fun. Speaking of Get Out of Hell, however, I actually never played that one. I watched my girlfriend play a little bit of it ages ago, but the copy we got was just scratched or something, because it eventually stopped working. Since what we did play was so mediocre, we never really bothered replacing it, and instead we just moved on to other games. When the Saints Row 3 remaster was announced, I was super excited. I pre-ordered it, I took the day off of work to play it with my girlfriend on launch day, and frankly, I was super disappointed. It's a little better now, but when the remaster first came out, the game looked like shit. All the character models looked like Play-Doh parodies of the original characters, the lighting looked like an overly edited COD sniper montage, and the audio files sounded like they were recorded through a goddamn microwave. Needless to say, I didn't even bother actually playing the game. I went through the intro segment, I made my character, then just uninstalled. Obviously I reinstalled for this video, and it looks a little bit better now than it did back then, but I am not exaggerating when I say on launch, the original released back in 2011 looked miles better than the remaster released in 2020. And mind you, that's damn near a decade later. Anyways, now that we're back up to date on the history of Saints Row and my personal attachment with it, let's talk about the reboot. The reboot, simply titled Saints Row, was revealed during Gamescom earlier this year, and it was teased about a week or so before that in a tweet from Jeff Kiley. As a huge fan of the Saints Row franchise, obviously this really excited me. I remember when the remaster came out, Volition, or Deep Silver, or somebody mentioned wanting to move forward with the series. At the time, I kind of assumed they just meant remastering some of the other older titles, but I had no idea they had a whole-ass reboot in mind. I wasn't actively watching the Gamescom livestream or anything, but I saw a tweet about the reboot and instantly looked the trailer up on YouTube. Kenzie and I watched the trailer together, and although I was on the edge of my seat the entire time with excitement, there was a little anxiety muddled up in there. While Kenzie and I both really enjoyed the trailer and what it had to offer, I knew that there was going to be a portion of the fanbase left unimpressed by it. In my opinion, there are two sides of the Saints Row franchise, and in turn, two sides of the community. There's Saints Row 1 and 2, and there's Saints Row the 3rd, 4, and Get Out of Hell. The prior side being more nitty-gritty and rounded in realism, and the latter side being more goofy and stylized. Personally, I've always preferred the prior side of the Saints Row games. Saints Row 2 is my favorite game in the entire franchise, and it's one of my most favorite action games of all time. While Saints Row 1 is technically lacking and overall way stiffer than any of the other games, its portrayal of gang violence is arguably the best in the entire series, and it has some great characters and personality. Now, in saying that, I'm not saying that the latter side of games are bad by any means. Although they do have their flaws, simply being goofier than the first original entries doesn't make them bad games in and of itself. Regardless, there has always been this debate within the community about whether the serious approach or the goofy approach is best for the franchise. And while I prefer the serious approach, I understand where people are coming from in supporting the goofier one. Statistically, the latter side of the Saints Row franchise has always sold better than the prior one. Saints Row the Third really put Saints Row as a franchise on the map, and it was one of the best-selling video games of 2011. In terms of a business standpoint, I understand why Volition wants to proceed with the goofier theme moving forward into this reboot. However, that doesn't necessarily mean the community is going to agree. While I personally don't mind the goofy approach present in the reboot, a lot of the discourse I've seen on Twitter stems from that very thing. People want to go back to the darker side of gang violence present in the earlier games, and although I don't necessarily disagree, I think going pedal to the metal with the goofier side of things will do the game more justice. Personally, I'm excited to play another goofy shooter game like this. There has been enough depressing action games released lately, prime examples being Red Dead Redemption 2, Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us 2. The list really goes on, and I think another campy, over-the-top shooter like Saints Row is exactly what the industry could use right now. After watching the trailer, my first real impression was that the reboot was seemingly combining aspects of multiple titles. The character design, the weapons, the vehicles, and the dialogue really reminded me of Saints Row the Third, but the location the game is going to take place in, Santo Ileso, really reminds me of Stillwater, specifically Saints Row 1, Stillwater. The dingy back alleys combined with the bustling downtown sprawls really screams early Saints Row to me, and I'm all for it. The only thing from the trailer that really kind of made me nervous was the characters. The 4 characters they showed us, I assume, are going to be the main lieutenants we do missions with throughout the story mode, as well as just a self-insert for our character. Kevin seems pretty cool, his cat helmet really reminded me of Saints Row the Third. Eli seems like the cool and calculated, yet easily nervous character archetype, which is kind of weird for a Saints Row game. And frankly, Nina is the only character that doesn't seem like she's going to get annoying within the first couple hours of gameplay. A lot of people have been making memes about how the game should be called Trust Fund Row, since the characters look and act like a bunch of college kids that decided to make a gang. And as much as I hate to admit it, they're kind of right. It might just be the art style of the game, you know, that very Overwatch-esque style that a lot of games have clung onto lately, but the characters look kind of on the younger side. They definitely don't look like characters from a Saints Row game, I'll say that much. At the end of the day, to put my thoughts and feelings into a single statement, I'm excited for this reboot, but I'm also very anxious. The game seems pretty promising, but it looks like it's going to divide the community even more than it already was. Although the style of the game is pretty uninspired, frankly, I hope Volition will run with it and make the Saints Row reboot one of the better games in the Saints Row series. Simply put, I'm very excited, but I'm also very, very anxious. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Are you excited for the Saints Row reboot? Do you think it looks like shit? Let me know in the comments. Personally, I've already pre-ordered the Notorious Edition so I can get that steelbook. Gonna add it to my collection. Whatever. Alright, I'll let you guys go now. Take it easy, stay safe, and I'll catch y'all later.